pop music up until '56 seemed to be like an orchestra of some kind. I mean, the absolute typical records were all those Guy Mitchell records. My Heart Cries for You. God, I can't even remember them all. I blocked them out of my head. I mean, he did later on, Guy Mitchell, make one or two quite good records. Singing the Blues is a really good record. But the general Mitch Miller approach, and it was the same at all the other labels, Hugo Winterhalter and his orchestra, Gordon Jenkins and his orchestra. These records all had these things, you know, the name of the arranger, band leader, and his orchestra, and his chorus. And there were all these swampy, massive, big sounds. And you were aware of the kind of production method by which they were made, and the singer stands in the middle. I don't know whether I was aware that the singer never wrote their own songs, whether that mattered to me or not at that time. But certainly, it was almost like a Hollywood movie version of a pop record, you know, whether it was like a Busby Berkeley kind of production, big, large, a lot of people. And what I'm mostly aware of when I hear the rock and roll records is this is a small unit. This is people, you know, and now we know it really was truly like that, and they did play together and they worked out what they call head arrangements. So my instinct in this case was absolutely right, and the same thing applied if you were up at Chess Records with Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Willie Dixon playing the bass and sort of arranging the session. But essentially they go in, they find a groove, and they keep playing these takes until one feels right. So what I'm trying not to do now is to assign to my 16-year-old self knowledge and realizations that have come to me since. It's important to me to try to be true to that person who was, you could say, unnaturally interested in pop music. Like I say, I was making judgments and being critical and thinking, is this a hit? Is this catchy? Has this got a good beat? You know, I would think all those things. But I wasn't at all aware of how they came to be. I don't know whether I would have realized that the musicians had to go and play the same song 6, 7, 20, whatever number of times it was to get to this finished result. I don't think that would have occurred to me. I just didn't think about it.
Well, what about when you first heard of Scotty Moore?
Heard of him? Mm-hmm. I can't put myself back to the specific place. I can only say that I began in the early 60s as I got into the records of Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters, and on the West Coast, Johnny Guitar Watson, T-Bone Walker. I began to realize that the guitar on Elvis's record, whether I knew the name of the man or not, I don't know, was in this broad area, you know, that it was the same thing, because there are moments where you're kind of, there's these distinctions between pop music, which is these big orchestras and choruses, and what is not pop music. Rock and roll for me was almost like not pop music. It was like it was something different than pop music. I mean, I wouldn't say that now, but there was a moment when that's why I liked it. It wasn't, and pop music implied processed. It implied planning. It implied formulas, and this music had none of those qualities. So Elvis Hound Dog, the one thing about that which I used to wonder about was the use of the vocal group on his RCA records. As I began to listen to the Sun records and then go to the RCA ones, the vocal group seemed, I couldn't see it was necessary to have the vocal group there. It seemed to me to be getting in the way of what I liked. I liked the energy, I liked the raw drums, and the guitar in the space that it has on the Sun records is leading the way. It's the melody, it's the rhythm, it's the energy, and it's everything that Elvis needs in order to express that freedom that those songs are all about. And as you kind of box him in with these vocal groups, like, what are they doing? They're not helping. They're not adding to any of those qualities I've just mentioned. So they were beginning to bring in the kind of, to me, an old-fashioned approach to making records.
Well, you know, the whole thing about bringing the Jordanaires in and Floyd Kramer on piano and Chet Atkins on second guitar, that was the Colonel's way of, making Elvis homogenized. And the records, proved, that to be. And, John Lennon said it best, Elvis died when he went in the army.
Mm.
And, the records, he made, a few records after that, Little Sister, which Scotty's, didn't play on. And, a few records, Follow That Dream and
Guitar Man is a good
Yeah,
record.
things like that.
Yeah.
You know.
No, you can pick them out.
Yeah, but they're very few and far between.
To me, yeah.
And his mentality changed at that point.
Yeah.
And it seems like, in the U.S. anyway, you know, everybody progressed with him. But did people in Great Britain?
Progress with him in what sense do you mean progress?
They followed it.
They accepted the changes.
It, yeah.
Well, this is where I think the Beatles and the Stones came to the rescue of everybody. You know, that we didn't necessarily go along with what Elvis was doing. So we had a guy here, Cliff Richard, who started in '58 on TV. There was a kids' TV show, and he, as far as I remember, he was on virtually every week. I don't know if he really was, but it felt like that. And actually, he had a very good band. You know, his band were originally called the Drifters until they realised there was an American Drifters, and then they changed their name to the Shadows. And although people used to call Cliff Richard, you know, Britain's answer to Elvis, he was much more accurately Britain's answer to Ricky Nelson, who was Hollywood's answer to Elvis. Every now and then, Cliff Richard record would have room for a guitar to really do its stuff, and his very first B-side, Move It, which became the A-side, is actually a brilliant rock and roll record with great guitar, which certainly owes everything to Scotty Moore. I don't know if the guitarist has ever talked about that.